Sam Adams wasn't going to let a trial put the Boston Massacre to rest. He acted on his fellow citizens, reminding them all to remember the bloody massacre. And that wasn't all that angered him. Once again, King George and Parliament aggravated the situation in America. The Tea Act was passed, which forced the colonists to buy tea only from a British tea company. The Tea Act was too much. The Sons of Liberty. Samuel Adams was from Boston. He was a representative in the Massachusetts legislature when the Stamp Act was passed in 1765. His cousin was John Adams, who later became America's second president. Samuel was much more hot-headed than his cousin. He was leader of a group called the Sons of Liberty. It urged colonists to rebel against Great Britain and unfair taxes. Other members included Patrick Henry, Paul Revere, and John Hancock. These men met secretly to come up with ways to fight the king. The Sons of Liberty used propaganda to feed the anger of the colonists. Propaganda is information that tries to convince people of certain ideas. Adams and his friends used posters, newspaper cartoons, and pamphlets to show how unfair the king and his laws were. Sam Adams had a knack for stirring up crowds. Sometimes this led to violence. Sometimes British customs officers were captured, then tarred and feathered. Colonists poured hot tar on them and then covered them with feathers. And the homes of some British commissioners and military leaders were destroyed. Not all the Sons of Liberty were in favor of these violent acts, but America's freedom from Great Britain and King George III was Sam Adams' only goal. He was one of the most popular and most important leaders of the American Revolution. In Boston, the Sons of Liberty met daily to find a way to stop the Tea Act. In late November 1773, they saw their chance. 3 British ships docked in Boston Harbor, carrying hundreds of chests of tea. Armed with guns, Sam Adams and the Sons of Liberty immediately lined the harbor. They did not let the British unload the tea from the ships. Every day and every night, Boston citizens kept watch at the harbor, making sure the tea stayed right where it was. The standoff lasted for more than 2 weeks. Then, on December 16, 1773, Adams and the Sons of Liberty decided it was time to do something daring. They would get rid of tea once and for all. That very night, some 200 men and teenage boys disguised themselves as Native Americans. The crowd marched onto the docks at Boston Harbor. Because only a few British soldiers were guarding the docks and the ships, they put up no fight. They let the large armed crowd board the 3 boats. In 4 hours, the protesters dumped over 300 crates of tea, 46 tons of tea leaves, into the bay. There was one heck of a tea party that night. The colonists had broken the law by destroying British goods. Colonists were frequently hanged for such crimes. However, the next day, the mood in Boston was upbeat. The rebels felt they sent an important message to the king. They weren't going to stand for iron-handed control of the colonies anymore. Everyone involved in the Tea Party kept quiet about his part in the event. The men refused to admit anything when questioned by British authorities. This was a time long before email, before telephones, even before telegrams. It took a month for news of the Tea Party to reach Great Britain. When King George was told about the wasted tea floating in Boston Harbor, he was mad, boiling mad.